Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. This month we are continuing, actually wrapping up the theme "It's Okay to Fall." I just remember, actually, this theme dates back October of 2020. It was like a year after the podcast started. I remember having my story of recovery. We're in the midst of COVID-19, and there's a lot of adjustments. So not like anything was wrong or anything. I appreciate every guest that came on sharing, but also remember there was adjustments just because I wanted to tighten up the message and more, not the message itself, but allow more opportunities for people to be included in the dialogue. And I felt this topic was one of the main, I would say the first monthly theme that I started, and it actually became one I did every year. I remember some quotes. I use quotes a lot, but I just know one of the quotes I thought when thinking about this month again was from Henry Ford. He said, "Once one who fears failure limits his activities." It kind of reminds me that a lot of times we may not want to make mistakes. Most of us want to, as much as I've said it before, in maybe in nausea, um, we don't want to initially make mistakes. We want to maybe be able to adjust at the very least or get it done correctly. However, if we step back, sometimes we don't notice that these things take time to learn. These things take time to grasp. And even if you're able to sometimes to get it right the first time, if you don't know how it was that you got it right, sometimes that could be more of a setback later on. But a lot of times when I think about this concept, it's okay to fall, it sounds like a conversation one has with themselves. And some of those conversations are the most important ones. The idea of how we respond to failures can be a bigger impact than the failure itself. If I mess up on something notable, and there have been plenty of times thinking about my story, my life, where I felt, man, I really messed up. And I guess I could take it a little bit more personal in the fact that between a relationship with a mom and a son, I remember during the times when I was sick and struggling, there were times when uncertainty was clouded everywhere. Um, I feel confident in saying that if I were to ask my mom, or yeah, let's just use my mom as an example, how can I give back for all the times I've messed up? And I would think, and I feel very confident saying this today, that she would say, take care of yourself. Whatever at the time, if you're taking medication, do that. Be healthy. And, health in how we look at healthy, you know, changes. But I would say in this concept, it was just a mother and son. The mother doesn't want anything tangible from the son, anything that he can actually give, and even if he could, even if he had a substantial gain or windfall. To in this context, the one thing the son could give is to stay better, take care of oneself, be happy. I just, sometimes when we step back and we get out of the fluff of what we think would help, or expectations that bog us down, begin to be a little bit more honest. Winston Churchill says it this way: success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. And it is courage. Sometimes we think courage is externally helping someone else when there is risk. But how about internally moving on each day, getting up each day when you feel horrible, when you would not want to be here, when you wish you could just disappear? And then, even though you feel this, no matter what external positive affirmation, even though people are telling you you are loved and you are wanted to be around, even then, you still feel the same way. But um, you step back and you notice that not only that this may pass, this escalated feeling, but and even though you don't see the full staircase, as Martin Luther King once mentioned in his quote, even though you don't understand every corner, you have the courage enough to continue. That's a different kind of courage. Today, again, this is not really myself, but all those guests before this month and all the guests in other months. This is the last episode of this year, 2023, regarding this topic of it's okay to fall. It reminds me of the crisis that people may be in at this very moment. Last month, as I mentioned, is one more day. That was a theme. I encourage to remind listeners that if you are struggling and in need of help, please find that community resources. Find help, professional help. And in crisis in the United States, if you are in the United States, there's a 988 Suicide Crisis Lifeline. It is available to those people. But as I kind of wrap up this month's theme, I wanted to also recognize that a lot of talk sometimes is about environment. Not usually that word, but not really liking where one is, whether it's the residence, the home, maybe it's just a sense of being, of where they're at. I encourage you, as we talk about resources, of asking for help, that you do ask for help. And the environment may not be ideal, but I encourage you to find the courage to say I need help. And if you don't feel you can there, find somewhere you can, whether it's a church or a religious organization. Maybe it's a teacher at school, maybe it's someone at work. If you feel that you need help, as adults and those who are young, tell your parents, tell those closest to you, or tell someone you can't tell. These 3 words: I need help. As we press forward, I want to also just again say, in the meantime, if it's not a crisis, find resources that may be helpful wherever you are. And these resources are going to be very subjected to you. So if you're part of some club or support group or religious organization, I would say a lot of times I don't like to reinvent the wheel. Utilize those, find people you can share with. Albert Einstein says it this way. And like I said, Again, I'm not trying to hammer this down. You may not be where you want to be, or you may not agree with those people around you at your home, but at the very least, ask yourself if you can ask those three questions, three words: I need help. But moving forward in this month's theme, one of the quotes I want to go into to kind of discuss and to kind of contemplate, it was from Albert Einstein: a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. Now, there's comfort in familiarity of space, home, but a lot of times things that um, prevent us maybe even improving on our lives, taking the path that we haven't took, um, is this concept, the worriness of making a mistake. um, we've seen a lot of notable kind of sayings along these lines, but I do like how Albert Einstein says a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. So I guess the emphasis really is on what is the priority. And a lot of times, especially unfortunately, when there's some sort of change needed or some discomfort or something that is not currently helping or working at the moment, um, it's how we respond to those issues, barriers, those mistakes, or those things that you're struggling with. Like this quote can be a huge wall in front of you. You know, it becomes less about you yourself feeling like you're doing better and more about how you appear you're doing. Um, and for me, I think this segues to this question that I asked some of my guests this month, um, gearing it to me. What was my experience that helped me through some unnotable mistakes? What worked and what did not work during those times? Let's go to what did not work. What did not work was an unrealistic expectation of where I should or should not be. Um, it's okay to feel like um, bad about the circumstances, or it's okay to feel that a little guilt or feeling down or feeling uncomfortable that of the mistake you may have made. Um, but a lot of times we're even forcing that with I should have, and the blaming and the ruminating, at least from my experience, doesn't usually help. I think what does help is normalizing and understanding that I am human and I do make mistakes, like each one of us, if we're really being honest. And those mistakes, kind of honestly, it's just how you look at them. I don't feel, um, just like Albert Einstein says, but to further that thought, I really don't feel mistakes are how we see them. I think when it comes to life, testing well in a small segment of your life means very little when there's no understanding. But from my experience, also, what worked on the other side is being honest, unpacking it, and also being kind to myself. If it's been a problem for 10, 15, 20 years of my life, I am not going to solve it that night. No matter how insightful, no matter how deep, per se, no matter how, whatever the case may be. No matter how much support I have, no matter how much I feel belonged, it's going to take time to unpack. At least from my experience, that's usually the case. But when I have a better grasp of the present and um, the context, I find that it works better for working through that issue. Um, Especially most of my notable quote unquote mistakes. Um, and sometimes mistakes can be more derogatory to how we treat oneself when they are struggling. And sometimes the degree of how we treat ourselves is disproportional of that event. So, as an illustration, if I have always struggled with connecting with others, and then for um, some event led me to invite some of my friends over, and I've never really hosted anyone to my apartment. It's just an illustration. And I tried to think and write down what I need or not need to say. So, I'm being intentional. Now, the day comes, they come over, and not everything's aligned. I feel a little awkward. I may have said something in my mind as a little bit coy, a little bit less tactful, and then they go, and in my mind, as this illustration, I feel I failed. Now, the fact of the matter is, I probably didn't fail. And then, honestly, if you ask those friends in this scenario, they probably had an enjoyable time. But I didn't, because I felt that I should have been better. I shouldn't have made those mistakes. And sometimes, at least in this concept, I wouldn't say in that same avenue of thought, but those barriers that I have built in my mind, was definitely not helpful, and actually not kind to myself. Because in this concept, if I haven't really connected for a long period of time, how would I realistically know how to host? Or if I make one or two or however many mistakes, it's my negative response towards it is disproportional to what was actually happening. But a lot of times, unfortunately, people can tell me this all the time, but everyone hears only what he understands. So if I understand that I am not where I need to be, if I understand that I am struggling because it's all my fault, then every single problem becomes, well, at least can become my own fault. Um, like I said, understanding can be a big key to being okay with missteps. Or if the understanding is that I am always at fault, it can be a big barrier. Um, there's a word I mentioned in other podcast recordings and also this month with a few guests. Um, Nunchi in Korean, the subtle, often unnoticed art of listening, engaging another's mood. It's intentionally making that attempt. So, eventually, what I at least appreciate about this word, not only that I'm half Korean, is also the degree that there's no value amount that you would say that, okay, you've reached Nunchi. Is the idea that it is ongoing. So, this concept, at least I feel, being brought up, is something that I feel indirectly I have grown to be able to do in whatever degree that is. Um, but it's not something I knew I was doing. Just it's just my upbringing. However, a lot of these adjectives or these descriptions, I would say better because it is a noun, um, describes the ongoing process, and I do like that, bringing up this word. Um, Again, understanding can be a big key of being okay with a misstep, but understanding can also be that barrier depending on what your understanding may be on yourself. Question that I had some guests answer is, how have I navigated through the hard times towards understanding? Patience. You know, I think it goes with the concept I said before. Understanding, stepping back a little bit. Um, I I think some mindfulness. Um, During my therapy sessions I had with a counselor, there are many times when I had to step back and kind of see the situation, and that has helped towards navigating. When you're in it, in the thick of it, it does feel um, very polarizing. Either and and I feel I've practiced this method for years, and it has helped me get perspective of situations. But it's not easy because this is me also recognizing that there is a situation that I need to step back from. Um, so I've said this before in other podcasts, but I do my best work, and doing my best work is not just productivity; is also understanding. So I do my best work when I slow down. Um, Furthering that, and going to furthering the question, what have I seen work for myself and others of helping me or them gain understanding during a setback? What has not? Well, honesty, I would say, with oneself, um, but also kindness to oneself. So, understanding, I feel, at least from my experience, takes steps to unpack. So, um, I know one may be motivated, but I guess the concept can be closely related to when you're working out, or you're trying to go back and jog or run, or however you want to do. Um, a lot of times it's about consistency. So, um, if you want to run, let's say you want to be healthier, and running is part of it. A lot of times you kind of set limits to it as you build your endurance. Using this as illustration, let's say you really had a rough day, and um, you've been running for a little bit. You're just starting, and then one day, instead of doing your regular hour, hour and a half run, or however workout per se all together, you do 3 or 4 hours. And let's say you do that for 2 to 3 weeks, and you haven't built up to that. Problem that can happen is um, there's a risk that the consistency will not stay. You may get burnt out. Um, Reason working out, because sometimes we feel good. There's days if you're working out, you're like, okay, I could do. But a lot of times putting limits to how long, because your body may need to recover. And same thing emotionally. If you're making some strides forward and understanding, you're going to need time to reflect and pause. So I think it's attitude. A lot of times the attitude and how your expectations, even on a good day, and your understanding and your unpacking, those days take time to germinate. Let it germinate. at least from my experience. What has not worked when it comes to gaining understanding is external pressures of some segmented time to understand by. Example, you understand you want to understand a little bit more about why this happens every time you get into a relationship. So the problem is not the issue. The problem is 2-3 weeks the person doesn't see much, maybe some at that moment don't see much understanding, doesn't seem that he or she finds any clarity of why whenever it comes to relationship, friendships, or whatnot, um, there's something that always kind of presses the person away or makes it distant or doesn't work out. Um, Sometimes it involves going and asking for help from a professional if it's something that really is becoming more of a barrier that's affecting different parts of your life. I do encourage that. But sometimes it's at the same time, even if you do that or not, it's your attitude and your expectation level of how quick that will come. Um, mm, I would say uh, what has helped and what I've seen has helped is not have some arbitrary date that you need to. I need to be married, or I need to have a relationship, or I need more friends by this time. It's an external. It is something you can measure, but it's not very helpful in the attitude and the kindness. At least from my experience, one has for one another because it usually doesn't work in that way. Maybe rephrasing or reframing is that I would like to work to understand why I have issues. I would like to reach out or connect with someone by this time, or however that may be less. But us as humans, we're a lot of times a lot harder to ourselves than and disproportional of how we treat any given situation. So I think that is usually a big barrier. These external built, man-made built challenges. Now, sometimes we have challenges externally that um, are not man-made, and it's something that an issue or something that needs to be addressed. That's why prioritizing. And if it's overwhelming and you're struggling, I encourage you to find help. Ask someone, like I said in the beginning. Ask those 3 words, the 3-word question. I need help. If it's something that is internal and it's continued to affect your work, your professional, however way, I would encourage you to ask for help. Okay. Um, Another concept when it comes to it's okay to fall, it's kind of blended in there without even saying it, is that it is forgiveness. Dr. Martin Luther King said forgiveness is not an occasional act but a constant attitude. I think in that regards, at least from my experience, that holds a lot more truth. It's even though I'm very forgiving today, doesn't mean I'll be forgiven tomorrow. It's something that we kind of constantly have to, at least from my experience, to work on and towards. The question I asked some of my guests, and how has forgiveness played in my own setbacks and others around you? Well, it's something I'm still working on. I think some avenues I've improved on how I forgive certain setbacks in my life and those around it. Sometimes through perspective, through time, hindsight 2020, but also just because some of these concepts are taken and will take some time to unpack. But how has it played a role? It played a positive role when I'm actually giving my time to forgive myself. Um, not and not conditionally, just in the way that we all uh, have setbacks. We all would say we would wish things were different in some aspect, but um, I would encourage to think not so linear, but also what understanding have you grown since these issues? And some of the understanding I would personally feel is invaluable. It becomes more of who you are, um, and not to be insensitive. Obviously, there's certain life events that, uh, given the world we live in, we would love to avoid, and it's not something we would say, "Oh yeah, I would love to relive." And unfortunately, that happens more commonly than not. That there are setbacks. However, when it comes to your internal, your how you process, how you continue moving forward, um, forgiveness is going to be a great tool. At least I've seen that has helped navigate at the very least. Um, what would I want people to be reminded of this October regarding being okay with failing? That it's okay to be not all where you would like to be. A lot of times, if we really think about it, our lives are always completely, utterly unfinished. We're whatever state we're in, there's always more ahead. So be kinder to yourself. It's okay to have moments of failing, moments of struggles. And I say it's okay, not in the sense that it's okay that you are struggling, but it's okay that you're still working on getting out of those struggles. It's okay that even though you told yourself I'm not gonna do this again, you did it again. It's okay. These things take time. You know, I think a lot of times value comes into this idea of it's okay to fall because um when you, at least from my experience, when I value myself, when I when my shift in my life became something where I started valuing not just people in my life that are very important to me, who are a big impact in this, but when I started to value myself, when I started listening to or thinking about how can I give back to my mom and really understanding that it's just to be healthy, to continue moving forward. Today may be good if I have a hard day, to try to be the best. Not in the concept of competition, but try to find and navigate and be better. Not just, oh, mom, I'm going to give you this tangible thing to show my appreciation, which I still would love to do, but more so, be healthy, be better. That's what I would, I feel my mom, my family would love to have for me. So when I think about the derivative of that concept, I'm I'm more okay with the mistakes because they may be necessary. Because at the end of the day, the understanding always will provide an opportunity or even an ability to stay more consistent towards betterment. And I would like those people this for October this year, 2023, which I plan to continue having this theme each year. It is okay to fall, and my final thoughts as we wrap up is just be kinder to those around you. If you're not struggling, if you're doing well, be kind. And if you're not doing well, be kind. Um, Forgive yourself. The discomfort is normal. The anger most likely is normal. Struggle is real, but be kinder. If you can, step back and kind of see if you could be, if perspective can allow you to be kinder. And if you're still struggling, if your environment's changed, you got a new job, it was a lot worse before, but now on paper you're doing well, but then you yourself are still struggling, I encourage you to find help if you can. Even if everyone says, "Oh, you're doing well, you're doing so well, you got this new job, you're moving forward." If you yourself don't feel you are, if you yourself are struggling, if you just feel miserable, if every human gesture, every social seems heavy, if you just don't feel like connected, not in the sense of being introverted. I'm just, if it's impacting that, even though you feel that others keep saying that you're doing awesome, ask for help. Find help. So it's not just those visibly who are struggling that it's okay to fall. It's also the ones who are doing very well for themselves externally on paper. That is also okay to fall. And in that concept, if it's okay to fall, it's okay to get help. I encourage it. And I just want to also say I want to say thank you to all the guests this month and all the ones prior, and those who are I'll be recording soon. I appreciate each one of you, and of course, I appreciate those who are listening from the beginning. You know, and this is a lot of times I balance the line the the title of, well, the name of this podcast, Revive Ministries. A lot of times denote a lot of essence of proselytizing in the Christian sense, and for me, I struggled with the idea of how to convey that, and sometimes it can be confusing. But I like to kind of imagine this podcast and telling you and the listeners that it's really about continuing dialogues. That me being a Christian myself, using that template of the idea of missionaries going to another country or within their own town. They give resources, and it's not like I'm giving resources. But one thing I've noticed being in the church is a lot of conversations get shooed under the rug, and I love this opportunity that I can have dialogues with all types and backgrounds of people around the world regarding topics. And one interesting concept that I've heard is, well, I'm not an expert. Well, your experiences is of what you're gone through is what I want people to see. The idea is sometimes we turn off our brain when there's experts around, not to diminish or not to overlook the expertise of experts, but more about um, understanding and discovering that you yourself have choices and understanding yourself. And I would say that line, that towing that line, can be confusing at times, but I do appreciate these years and continued years that I see this podcast and those who have been on it and those who are listening to it. I want to say I appreciate each one of you. And I want to say also to stay all updated with Revive Ministries through its various platforms. Revive Ministries FL.com is our website. This is goodbye from Revive Ministries, leaving you with this last quote. It's from Mary Anne Radmacher. It says, "Forgiveness is really a gift to yourself. Have the compassion to forgive others and the courage to forgive yourself."